Hello everyone. I hope you're all well and getting into the swing of things with your academic work. This video looks at what's called total absorption costing. It will support the online materials you'll be studying for this week and is a follow-up to our Zoom meeting last week. Total absorption costing is quite a complex process and is not all that easy to get to grips with. You should aim to understand both the overall flow and objectives of the process and the detailed procedures at each stage. In other words, you need to understand the concept and the detail of total absorption costing. We've already looked at what is called the contribution a product makes for a business. You will recall that the contribution is the difference between what a manufacturer sells the product for and its variable or direct cost. The contribution is an important concept that can be used in break-even analysis, make or buy decisions, and marginal decisions about selling at below full cost in certain circumstances. But a business will not make a profit unless it covers all its costs. Also, businesses need to know what the total cost of making its products or providing its services is. This is an essential part of managing the business effectively. So a plumber may base part of his or her quotes on the estimated time the job will take. The plumber needs to know, what does each hour I work cost me to provide? Repair shops and garages need to know what it costs to operate the shop or the garage per hour. This may then contribute to how they price the jobs they do for their customers. Hospitals need to know how much it costs to keep a patient in intensive care. This will be important in setting and staying within the hospital's budgets, allocating resources efficiently, and applying for funding. How much does it cost to educate an engineering student? We know what you pay in fees, but what does it cost to provide you with your education? How does it compare with educating an accounting student? And how can a university use that information to manage its resources efficiently? These are just some examples of the importance of covering all costs, direct and indirect. In this session, we're going to look at how we can calculate the full or total cost of a product or service. Here's the product. It's a microphone, or more specifically, it's an AEA R88. AEA stands for Audio Engineering Associates. This is a passive ribbon microphone based on the legendary R44 microphone. It has two ribbons mounted at 90 degrees to each other. Each ribbon records a figure-of-8 signal, so this is in effect a stereo ribbon microphone. I don't find it particularly pretty to look at, but it's a wonderful microphone which will give excellent results in certain circumstances. You'll have a chance to hear it later on one of the additional videos on the course blog. But what does it cost? Well, if you wanted to buy one today, it would set you back about £2,000. But our focus today is on what does it cost to produce? What are the costs and how do they add up or accumulate? Some costs can be directly attributed to the microphone. These are the costs we can see. In other words, its direct costs. There are the direct materials used in the product. Dismantle this microphone and you will see what they are. The technology of a passive ribbon microphone is relatively simple, but there are probably more bits and pieces here than you think. Then there is the direct labour. The parts don't magically rearrange themselves. The product has to be assembled. Components have to be sourced or built, and it has to be tested and packaged. The wages of anyone who works on the product is classified as a direct labour cost. There may also be other direct costs, for example a royalty payment or a license payment for each microphone produced in order to use someone else's know-how or patents. We can add all these things up and we'll have the total direct cost or the prime cost, but we don't yet have the total production cost. This is because there will be other costs which are incurred in running the company's workshop or factory. These costs relate to the factory rather than the product, and appropriately, in a way, they are called overheads. They are quite literally the cost of running the building, keeping a roof over your head. So this microphone has been produced in a workshop where there may be various production departments or stages, for example assembly, testing, finishing and packaging. There may also be service departments, for example stores, a canteen, recreation facilities and so on. So how do we add to the direct cost of this microphone an appropriate or equitable share of the overheads of the workshop in which it is produced? That's a big question, and the answer is with difficulty. So prepare yourself accordingly. The process might also seem a little bit artificial or arbitrary to some of you. It may also appear difficult to you at first, difficult both in terms of understanding the overall concept and also in the detail of the various steps. You may have to stick with it and work with it. The study materials divide the process into 6 steps. The first 2 are relatively straightforward. The first step is to identify what the business's overhead expenses actually are and what labels should be used to classify them. This is likely to vary with the type of business and what sort of analysis it wants, so any terms we use here are likely to be a bit general. The second step is the actual collection of the data. The amount budgeted for each overhead heading must be estimated before the production period in order to plan. There then follows a rather involved process which consists of 4 consecutive stages. Confusingly, these have special names and all of them begin with the letter A. Try not to get them mixed up or use them interchangeably. They all have unique meanings in this process. Let's look at these in turn. We'll use the example in the study materials, but we'll miss out the detailed calculations. You'll need to study that bit on your own. To get us started, we've drawn up a worksheet. A spreadsheet program like Excel is great for this job. We can see that this particular factory is organised in 5 departments. These are shown along the top of the worksheet. 3 of them are production departments. We've called these P1, P2 and P3. They could be assembly, testing and packaging, for example. The important thing about production departments, or cost centres, is that the product passes through them as part of the production process. However, it is not necessary for any particular product to pass through all of them. We also have 2 service departments, S1 and S2. Service departments, or cost centres, do not work directly on the product. Instead, they provide a service to support the production departments. For example, these service departments might be canteen facilities and training. Then we have a list of the various overheads the company incurs. Be assured that these are all overheads, so you may see the word materials and labour in the first 2 labels, and you may think, these are direct costs because materials and labour are direct costs. That's true, but not here, because these are indirect materials and indirect labour. Indirect materials, for example, could include things like cleaning materials, glues and adhesives, PPE and so on. Indirect wages would include wages to cleaners and supervisors and so on. They are part of the business's labour cost, but they don't actually work on the product. They are indirect. So this worksheet does not include any direct materials, labour or expenses, only overheads. The next stage of our process is allocation. There will be some overheads which can be collected for individual departments. For example, some indirect materials used may be only used in a particular department and can be recorded separately and allocated to that department. Supervisors may be employed separately in each department, so their wages cost can be directly allocated to the relevant departments. Machines may have their own meters, so power used may be measured separately for each department and allocated accordingly. So there may be overheads that can be allocated directly to each of the 5 departments. However, other overheads may be available only as total figures for the factory as a whole. That takes us to stage 2, the apportionment of overheads. In this process, the aim is to apportion these overheads fairly to each department. Of course, there may be a debate as to what is equitable, so this part of the process may, in practice, be contentious or political. Factory rent and insurance might be apportioned between departments on a basis of floor area occupied, so bigger departments will take a bigger share of these expenses. Supervision costs might be apportioned between departments on a basis of numbers of workers in that department, and so on. We will continue allocating and apportioning overheads to each of the departments. Finally, we will have a worksheet which looks something like this. At this point, we have a total amount for overheads allocated and apportioned to each of the departments, and in good accounting tradition, the figures add up and agree vertically and horizontally. The next step is to reapportion the overheads from service departments to production departments. We need to do this because the product we are costing does not pass through the service departments. So, in a sense, the service departments themselves become overheads which need to be apportioned between the production departments. There will be an issue where a service department services not only the production departments, but also another service department. That issue is not insurmountable, and you will see the various ways of dealing with it in the learning materials. Once we reach this stage, we should have a total amount for overheads for each production department. We now have to decide how to divide the estimated overheads between the various products or jobs in the production departments. This stage of the process is called overhead absorption. There are different ways of doing this, but 2 methods predominate. One is to work out a charge per direct labour hour worked. To do this, we also need to know the total estimated hours that will be worked in each production department. Remember, this is all done before the period in which the production takes place. So if the total direct labour hours are expected to be 10,000 hours, and the estimated overheads allocated and apportioned to that department are £45,000, the direct labour hour rate will be £4.50 per direct labour hour. So if an actual job subsequently takes 3 hours work in that department, the extra charge to cover the overheads will be 3 times £4.50, which is £13.50. You'll find this method used in many garages when you put your car in for repair or servicing. The second way is to work out a charge per machine hour. It's similar to the direct labour hour rate, but uses machine hours. So we need to estimate the total machine hours that will be worked in each production department. So if the total machine hours budgeted for a department are 5,000 and the total budgeted overheads charged to that department are 56,000, the machine hour rate will be 56,000 divided by 5,000, which is £11.20 per machine hour. The machine hour rate is applied in the same way as the direct labour hour rate. If a job requires the use of 4 machine hours, the extra charge to cover overheads will be 4 times £11.20, which is £44.80. So which method should be used? Well, it will depend on whether the department is labour intensive or machine intensive. If a department has significantly more budgeted direct labour hours than machine hours, then it should be regarded as labour intensive. Labour intensive departments should calculate a direct labour hour rate and seek to recover overheads by making the appropriate charge on each job. Machine intensive departments will have more machine hours budgeted than labour hours. These should use a machine hour rate to recover overheads. There are examples of these calculations in the online study materials. These labour and machine hour rates are the overhead recovery rates which will be used to absorb all the factory overheads into the cost of products and services during the actual production period, hence the term total absorption costing. Note that some departments or cost centres may use a machine hour rate and some others may use a direct labour hour rate. Now let's skip to the end of the production period and look at what has actually happened. Well, everything may not have gone according to plan. Actual overheads may have turned out to be larger or smaller than what had been budgeted for. Also, the actual machine hours or direct labour hours worked may be different from what had been expected. That will mean that overheads will have been either under-recovered for the period or over-recovered for the period. There's no way of avoiding this because both the numerator and the denominator of the recovery rate are based on expectations. So how is this whole process of estimation and recovery scheduled in a business? Manufacturing tends to be organised into production periods, which are subdivisions of the financial year. There may be 12 monthly production periods, or 13 4-week production periods, or 4 quarterly production periods, and so on. Overhead recovery rates will need to be estimated and calculated before the relevant production period, and then applied during the production period. At the end of the production period, the actual overheads will be looked at and compared with what had been budgeted. Total absorption costing works best where the factory is organised into distinct departments or has distinct cost centres. Many production facilities now reflect modern manufacturing techniques, which do not reflect traditional processes. Total absorption costing may not work well in these circumstances. This has led to the development of activity-based costing methods. We'll look at these next time. In the meantime, and believe me it is relevant, have a look at the 2 videos in the blog about 2 well-known manufacturers of microphones. AEA, that stands for Audio Engineering Associates, is based in Pasadena in the USA and models its microphones on classic ribbon designs. Indeed, AEA has fueled much of the modern revival of interest in ribbon microphones. We can have a look at the outside of their production facility using Google Maps and Street View. The company's address is 1029 Allen Avenue, Pasadena. So let's see if we can find that. Here we are. I think this is the correct address. That looks like 1029 on the door. Doesn't look very impressive, does it? But this is a fairly deep building, and AEA is not a mass manufacturer. This seems more a workshop than a factory. Remember, Stradivarius built his violins in a workshop in Cremona, not a factory, and he didn't have too many machines to work with. Let's now go to Sydney in Australia and have a look at Rhodes' production facility there. Again, we'll use Google Maps and Street View. We need to find 107 Carnarvon Street, Silverwater, which is a suburb of Sydney. It's not so easy to find. But here we are. This looks like a big factory, a new extension too. The video tour of the building posted on the blog confirms the high-tech approach and market focus of this company. The intensive technology-based approach of this company means that it may not be particularly suitable for traditional absorption costing. There is an alternative, and it's called activity-based costing, or ABC for short. And this will be the focus of next week's learning activities. Here's a Rode NTR ribbon microphone, the only ribbon microphone currently produced by Rode. It's a lovely piece of engineering, a work of art really, and a really nice microphone too. It's an active mono mic which sells for under £500. The microphone and its price completely reflect Rode's approach to manufacturing technology and pricing. It's very heavy. You wouldn't want this to fall on your foot in more ways than one. I'll use it in a future video so that you can hear what it sounds like. Before our next session, you could perhaps look at the AEA video and Rode video and think about the following questions. How do the manufacturing systems of the two companies differ? Identify direct materials and direct labour as they are being used in the video. How will the overheads of the two businesses differ? Which company might be more suitable for total absorption costing? And which one might want to use activity-based costing? You're all engineers, so which company would you prefer to work for? Well, that's all for now. See you soon. Take care and stay safe.